Assalamualaikum and good day. Today I'll be continuing with our class content, which is on user-defined class. What user-defined class means is all this while you are creating your own class, right? And along the way, you've been using Java library like Maths, Scanner, and so on. So this time around, we'll be learning about how to um, write your own defined class, which is your own class, applying the object-oriented concept uh, in a better way, right? Okay, I think we will be looking at several UML class before, so everybody is aware about this, right? This is the class name, whatever on top is the data field or the attributes, and whatever underneath is the methods. Okay, you can see that whatever method that having the same name as the class is actually the constructor. Okay, you can have more than one. Okay, if you still remember, constructor is actually methods within the class that is used to provide initial value. For example, in this case, we have radius as attribute, and this method here basically trying to give initial value to the variable radius. And then if you can still remember, plus sign here means it's public. Okay, the same goes here, calculate area. So this is another method which is a public method, and it is returning a double. So whenever you create instances of object for circle, meaning that you create several um, uh, objects of circle. For example, you initialize, you create an object called circle 1. Circle 1 basically is not having in the memory, it's not having the object here, but it's actually only having the address of the object. The object is somewhere else, and here it's basically storing the address. For example, circle 1 is in the location 1 to 2, so it's actually pointing to a circle, okay, a circle object. So this is how you draw it. Okay, let's say the name of the object is circle 1, double colon, circle, followed by the class name. So this is the class. The down underneath is actually the objects. So you can create many objects depending on how many times you create the objects using the, if you still remember, you have to use the word new, okay, in order to create the object. Okay, I mentioned this is constructor is used to initialize objects, and you can also have constructor with no parameter. Okay, this is also referred to no argument constructor, right? A class may be defined without constructor. Sometimes you don't have to create a constructor at all. Okay, in this case, a no argument constructor with an empty body is implicitly declared, so you don't have to write it. Java is assuming that you are having it. Okay, this constructor is called default constructor. It is provided automatically only if no constructor are explicitly defined, meaning that, for example, you write your own class, you don't have the constructor, so Java is assuming that you have the default constructor there. Okay, you don't have to do it. Yeah, Java will create it automatically for you, right? So when in this example, we are writing it, right? So we have public circle. So let's say you don't have this, it's also okay, no worries. Okay, you can still call circle um, like this without no argument. So this is called no argument constructor, right? So you can also have constructor with argument. You can have more than one. It depends on what variable that you have for that class. If you have 5 attributes and you want to give all the 5 attributes initial value, you can add more to this. Okay, so basically constructor job is to provide initial value. Constructor are a special kind of method that are invoked to construct object. Okay, whenever you construct object, this is being called constructor. Is being called. Okay, you can also use this. Okay, I think you used this before in the previous course. Okay, you use the keyword this when using the same object reference variable name. Okay, later on you will learn how to apply the concept of inheritance, where maybe you will have the variable radius but in the parents class. So to differentiate between the radius variable in your class compared to the radius variable, for example, in the parent class, so you use the word this. Okay, this is a keyword used to refer to whatever method or variable inside the same class, right? Okay, I think you've been looking at this before. How do you declare object reference variable? Okay, what that means is you have a class already, let's say a student class, and you want to use it. Okay, and the way to do it is to create a reference to that object. Okay, and then assign the object to a reference variable. So what this means is that, okay, looking at the circle example just now, okay, you create an object with the name of my circle. So my circle here is referring to the object reference. Okay, variable. So before this, you used to use integer, double, float. All those are primitive value. This one here, when you are creating a variable, but this variable, the type here is object that you create, or the one that is already there created by your friends or other programmer. So this is called as object reference variable. Okay. Okay. You can actually write combining one as one line like this, or you can create several lines. Okay. For example, looking at the same example just now. Okay. This is your object reference name. You can have more than one if you want to create more than one object. So whatever here should be the same like here. As for the time being, okay, later when you learn about inheritance and so on, you will realize that this one here can be different from this one. Okay, but as for now, just to make you familiar with the concept of object, it should be the same. Okay, so when you say new circle, open and close bracket, you are actually referring to the constructor, okay, that we have created just now, right? Or sometimes maybe in your own class you forgot to create the constructor, but when you want to run it, you call it, so there will be no error also, because Java created the constructor no argument constructor straight away for you. Okay, so when you do this, when you write this code and then compiler run it, what will happen is that, so compiler, whenever it reach this line, when you say new circle, it actually goes to your circle class and look for this kind of similar kind of method format. In this case, this one is calling for no argument constructor. Okay, then when you say your circle, so your circle, you can imagine in the what happened in the computer memory. Your circle variable is created, and again I would like to remind you, this is a object reference, meaning that it's a variable that reference an object. Okay, so basically here is containing only the address of the object that you just create. Okay, so the name of your object is your circle, so it's here in double colon followed by the object or the class type here. Okay, so when you did this, what happened is this is created for you in the memory. Okay, so radius is set to 0, 0 because when you call this constructor, you do not do anything. You basically only create an object where the variable inside it, in this case is radius, is not given any value. So it is automatically set it to 0, 0. Okay, in the second line, you say your circle dot radius. Your circle dot radius. Okay, dot radius. So what happened is that radius right now is being assigned a new value. Rather than 0 before, it become 100. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, if you have created an object, if you want to refer to the attribute or the method, you should use dot. Okay, provided all this code is running in the same class. Okay, you define this class circle, and then you have public void main static public static void main method inside the same class. You can run this way. Okay. Okay, this is another example where instead of calling the no argument constructor, you call the other constructor, the one with one one parameter. So let's say you create in another, you can do this in the same code, okay? Rather than calling the one with no argument attribute, you call the one with parameter with argument. So let's say you say my circle, new circle 5.0. Okay, 5.0, whatever here should match the one that is defined here. If this is double, this one should be double. If this is integer, this one should be integer. So when you write this kind of code, when the compiler run it, it will look for the parameter, will be looking for constructor with one parameter, which is type double. Okay, so it will go here, and then here is 5.0, so it bring this 5.0. Okay, and 5.0 is assigned to radius. Okay, so radius right now here is 5.0. So you have my circle, so my circle variable is created. Okay, and it's pointing to the object just created from executing the constructor. Okay, so the value of radius now is 5.0. Okay, I mentioned just now, if you want to refer to the members of the object, for example, in our case, attribute and also method, you should be using dot. Okay, you should be using dot. Okay. So if you want to access, if you still remember, in our circle class just now, there's a method called calculate area. So you say my circle dot calculate area. So it depends on the variable name that you define. If you say circle one, so it will be circle one dot calculate area. Okay. Okay. Hopefully it does not confuse you, because before this, when you are using Java classes, Java library classes, you call it specifying the class name straight away, right? Like max.pow, power3, comma 3.0. But what you have learned just now is slightly different. You have to create an object first. Based on that object name, you call it, right? For example, if you define the object name, oh, let's say based on the code that you have just now, can you invoke calculate area using calculate one dot calculate area? No, you cannot. Okay, it's different because this one here, all the method used before this are static method. Okay, even the one in maths class, the methods are defined as static. Okay, when you define it as static, you can use it straight away. But the one that we have just now in the circle class, especially for calculate area, only one method just now, it is not defined as non-static. So when it is not defined as non-static, you have to call it like this. Okay, this is the object name that you declare dot get area. Okay, so this is a bit confused because just now we were using circle, right? So if you want to call circle dot calculate area straight away, like the way that you use for maths, it's not allowed. Okay, why? Because calculate area method is not having a keyword static in front. All right, so we'll come into this later. Okay. Okay. The data field can be of reference type. Okay, for example, the following student name contain the data field name of string. Okay, for example, in this example, we have a class called student. It's a public class student. Alright, inside here it has name, string, age is boolean. So this is char, boolean, integer is primitive value. String, if you still remember, is not actually primitive value. It's an object reference. So you can have multiple. You've been using it, right? Without being aware. Okay, if a data field of a reference does not refer to any object, the data field hold a special literal value, which is none. Okay, right. Okay. Let's come to this. Right, the default value for a data field is null for a reference type. Okay, let's say you do not define initial value for object type. So Java will automatically give it null value. Okay, if you have a numeric variable, if you forgot to put the initial value, it will give 0, assign 0 straight away. If you have a variable boolean and you forgot to give the initial value, it will assign the value false to you. Okay, and the character, not sure what that is. Okay, if you forgot, you have a char variable type, if you forgot to give initial value, so this value will be assigned to that char variable. However, Java assign no default value to local variable inside a method. Okay, so for example, you have you create a class called student. Okay, and if you still remember just now, our student class does not have any constructor, right? So in here you call new student. This is no argument constructor. Then you do not give any value, yet you try to print the value out. So you say student.name. Okay, student.age. Okay, and then you try to retrieve all the value, but you haven't assigned any. Okay, so be careful with that. Java assign no default value to a local variable inside a method. Okay, so for example, you have variable x and y. X is integer, y is string, and you want to use it straight away without initializing, so there will be error. Okay, just to recap about primitive type and object type. Okay, primitive type is the one that you'll be using integer with the small ei, right? Boolean, float, double, all the numerical value. Those are primitive type, whereby object is the one either you define it, you write your own code, or some of it is from object from Java. Okay, for example, string, okay, string, integer is integer, but it's a object from Java, which is maintaining integer information, or double. This is double with a capital D. So whenever you find something like this. This is actually object to manipulate or to handle integer operation. Okay, object from Java that is handling all operation related to double. Okay, so all these are actually reference type. It's reference. Okay, it's only when you define it here, it's basically containing the address of the location of the object. Right, so just be careful with that. So okay, for example, you have this is a primitive type. We say I equal to j. Okay, I before this, when you run it, assuming I equal to 1. Okay, okay, after you do this, I equal to j, it become, let's say j value is 2. Okay, sorry. I is 1, j is 2. Okay, let's say after you have executed this code, so you are basically I before this is 1, but you replace it, you give a new value to I, it becomes 2. So I and j has right now value is 2 2. Okay, so this is primitive value. Primitive value difference with object type is that the memory, the space that is holding is having the value of the variable straight away here. Compared to this is slightly different. Okay, if you create an object type variable, so let's say you have C1. Okay, circle 1 for example. Circle 1, you use the term new, right? Circle 1, circle C1 equal new circle, it will create an object here. Okay, again this is reference, so it's only having the address. So C2, for example, you create another object called C2 and you give a value which is 9. So it's actually here. So when you actually do a statement like this, C1 equals C2. So before this C1 is pointing here, now because you see C1 is equal to C2, C1 will be pointing to, referencing to what C2 is referencing. So the previous object is actually missing. You cannot access it anymore. Okay. Shown in the figure, after the assignment of C1 and C2, C1 points to the same object. Okay, so this object is known, C1 object cannot be accessed anymore. Okay, when that happens, it is said to be a garbage. Okay, garbage tu sampahan. Garbage is automatically collected by JVM. Okay, after a while, JVM in your compiler will remove that object. Okay, if you know that the object that you no longer need it, you can assign null. Okay, you can assign null to it. Okay, otherwise JVM will automatically remove it.